If it's not working for them, they can leave. Nobody's going to be a prisoner here.
Oh my god, you guys, Kody completely lost his mind on this week's episode of the Sister Wives Tell-All. For real, it was so painful to watch. He was so defensive, and the reasons why were completely bizarre.
I'm not in a place where like I say, hey, I'm divorcing you. I can't do that. However, any one of them I feel like can.
So guys, I don't want to waste any time. Let's just get right on into this one. This was by far one of the weirdest episodes of Sister Wives that I have ever watched. I mean, you can tell that Kody is definitely officially completely losing it.
I do recommend you find a soulmate. I do recommend that you find real passion. Somebody who wants to make you dance the dervish.
I don't know why I thought he'd be a little bit calmer and a little bit more apologetic about how things went down on this season of Sister Wives, but wow, you guys, I couldn't have been any more wrong. This is definitely the worst we have ever seen him and Robin, but I'll get more into that in just a second. So it's a three-part tell-all, and this one was definitely focused more on Kody and Christine's relationship, but that doesn't mean that Kody and Robin didn't completely lose their minds on camera, because yes, oh my god, you guys, they did.
This is not right. This is not fair.
So first, let's take it back to last week. Most of it was strangely focused on Kody and Mary's marriage. I'm not so sure why, because it was just a lot of rehashing stuff out from the last decade. It didn't seem super necessary, but there was one moment that completely shocked me, even for Kody Brown. At one point, Kody tells the interviewer that there's a double standard in their religion because he is not allowed to leave his wives, but they are allowed to leave him whenever they want.
Hey ladies, nobody's a prisoner here. If you don't like where you're at in this family, figure it out, make your choices, you're free. And my wives were offended by that. They were like, well, what, you got to try and get rid of me?
So the interviewer asks Kody if that's really the truth, because if he hadn't physically left them, he had emotionally abandoned them. And Kody freaked out more than I have ever seen him freak out before that I can ever remember. He started yelling at the interviewer to take the word abandon back, and he wouldn't continue until she had.
Coming up, there's a scene where I'm with my four wives, and I am very angry.
And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but that seems a little bit defensive when we can all clearly see that that's what has happened. And he said that with Mary in particular, he did not emotionally abandon her because she abandoned him when she had the affair with the catfish. I mean, is he serious? Anyone with eyes can see that the reason Mary, in my opinion, had the affair with the catfish was because he had emotionally abandoned her to be with Robin. I mean, it literally all started when they legally got divorced. I mean, how could he be so ridiculous? Does he think that we can't put the two and two together? He was so manipulative in both of these episodes, it honestly made me sick, and it only got worse from there.
Struggling a lot. Second-guessing myself.
Because in this week's episode, Kody and Robin were both in rare form. It began when Kody was telling the interviewer that Janelle had more of a duty to him than she does to their children together. And I don't know about what you guys all thought, but I thought it seemed pretty narcissistic. And it became pretty hypocritical on top of that. And he even said that because Janelle's sons wouldn't follow his rules, Janelle should have kicked them out because they're over 18. So Janelle isn't required to provide them with shelter anymore. I mean, it just makes no sense. Can you imagine saying that about your own kids? He acts like there's, random children that he's never even met before. And the funniest part about the entire thing is that Robin still has kids over 18 living in her house too, and Kody and Robin never seem to mention it, and he isn't telling Robin to kick them out. So after this all went down, Kody tells the interviewer that his relationship with Gabe and Garrison is almost completely non-existent, and he said that they barely talk anymore, and when they do, it's just not really friendly, and he even mentioned that they need to get into therapy to repair their relationship. So it seems to me that a lot of this could have just been avoided if Kody had just listened to his kid's point of view from the beginning instead of getting so defensive.
I'm like, this is all, and I'm in this mood, terrible mood, about how I feel like they really don't care to be in a relationship with each other.
I mean, I really don't blame either of the boys for not wanting to have a relationship with Kody. I can tell you, I personally wouldn't want to either. He is so insanely mean to them, and he does it on national television, so can you really blame them? And Janelle even goes so far as to say that several of his children are currently at odds with Kody because of how strict his COVID rules were. I mean, I can't even imagine how many of the kids are upset with him that don't appear on the show anymore. So now you guys, here's the interesting thing. This tell-all was filmed on November 8th, 2021, and that's an entire year after this season was filmed. So that means that over the course of the last year, it seems like Kody has made zero effort to repair his relationships with his family members after putting so much distance between them during the pandemic. And yet, he still gets defensive and acts like the victim over the course of this entire episode. So I mean, honestly, you guys, there were times over the course of this episode where I was wondering personally if he was having a mental breakdown. He just seemed like he's that far gone.
If you don't communicate, your marriage can't survive usually. At least mine haven't.
Even when he tries to talk about how he loves his kids and wants them all to live at Kody Pass, he turns it back into how he's the victim because they don't have the respect for him. I mean, is he serious? Why can't he ever take responsibility for himself and his actions? If his kids don't have respect for him, it's probably pretty much related to how they've watched him have very little respect for his non-Robin wives over the years. I mean, don't you guys agree? And I mean, who talks about their children like they're the victim? It just is so odd. So I feel like he spent the entire episode screaming about how he had been betrayed and belittled by everyone in his family, and this episode was filmed before the season aired, so maybe he didn't know how he would come across over the course of the season, but wow, he really needs a reality check. And weirdly enough, one of the people who stood up for Kody the most and really had no reason to was actually Christine.
So I think that perspective is a crazy, crazy thing. And I think we all have a tendency to look back and see something different than the other person.
She explained his reactions and actions over the course of the season way better than Kody did during this episode. She explained why she thought that he was feeling certain ways about the choices she and Janelle were making, and on the flip side, Kody just got defensive and yelled about how it wasn't his fault. So I don't know about you guys, but Christine was probably my favorite part of this episode. I mean, she seems to be in an amazingly great place. For all of Kody's craziness and accusations, she stayed cool and calm and collected, and it just kind of seems like she's so much happier not being stuck along with his drama. She definitely seems at peace with the decision that she made to leave the family.
Life is so great. Like, I had no idea life could be simple. I didn't know it could be simple. I was asking Mikkelty, I'm like, is life simple? And she goes, yeah. And I said, married life is simple? She goes, yes. Life is simple.
But one person who does definitely not seem to be at peace with it, though, is Robin.
Yeah, I've always felt like we struggled to communicate effectively.
But I honestly don't know if it was real, if it was just for show. So Robin went off on a tangent about how Christine and Kody weren't technically divorced because it hadn't been recognized in the eyes of their church yet. And I personally found it completely hilarious because isn't Robin the same person who always says that she won't speak on the other wives' relationship? So now all of a sudden she has no problem telling the world that Kody and Christine aren't actually divorced?
I don't actually like it when he talks about other relationships to other wives. I think that there should be lines of privacy.
But for what it's worth, it sounds like that means nothing to Christine or Kody, only really to Robin. Christine dropped a bombshell that she was not a part of the family's religion anymore and hadn't been a part of the family's religion for many, many, many years. This was crazy news, obviously considering that Christine comes from one of the most prominent families in their religion. But Kody, on the other hand, said that he's fine with the fact that she's not in the religion anymore, and he honestly doesn't seem too concerned that the divorce hasn't been, quote-unquote, recognized in the church yet. Like he said earlier in the episode, he's not allowed to leave his wife, so the fact that he isn't fighting any of this most likely means that he wanted Christine to leave on her own. And I'm not sure he wants the same for Mary, but she chooses to stay for some bizarre reason. I predicted at the beginning of this season that she was going to leave, and sadly, you guys, I was wrong. So I will admit when I was wrong, and in this situation, I was definitely wrong. At one point, he even mentions that. He said that what Mary's doing by staying is not enough for anyone. So why won't Mary just leave? She always says that she feels called to stay in the family. Why, I really truly don't know. But then Kody got upset that Janelle and Christine are so close. I mean, you guys, I can't even make this stuff up. Gabe says that he was raised by Christine just as much as he was raised by Janelle, and Kody says that that is a negative thing. I mean, why? Because they're excluding Robin. And I'm sorry, you guys, but how much can Kody and Robin try to portray themselves as being the victims here? It honestly doesn't even make any sense. Janelle and Christine raised all of their children together from the beginning. They became close friends because of it. Their kids view them both as their moms. That should be a very positive thing. And at the beginning of the show, they all said that that's why they chose plural marriage in the first place. But then Robin comes along and wants to be included, which I understand, but how do she and Kody not realize that it's going to be a different dynamic? She joined the family many years later and raised her kids separately from Mary, Janelle, and Christine. So the dynamics are always going to be at least slightly different. It's not going to catch up to the experience that Christine and Janelle have. But now Kody wants everyone to see them as bullies because they didn't include Robin into the friendship that they had with each other, I guess. So, I mean, it's just like, what is this, middle school? I'm sorry, but how dumb does he think we are? We can all very clearly see who the bullies are from watching the show, and it's not Janelle and it's not Christine, at least in my opinion. And how horrible of him to say that what Gabe views as a positive of his upbringing is actually a negative. I mean, I haven't been a fan of Kody Brown for a very long time, but wow, I really just cannot stand him after this episode. And one of the biggest bombshells of this episode came from Robin. I kind of enjoyed how the interviewer just let her talk to see what she would say because wow, she said some pretty interesting stuff. She finally admitted that she's the only wife that has a romantic relationship with Kody. Kody himself said that he and Janelle, who is technically his only other wife left besides Robin, don't partner well. For some reason, Robin took it upon herself to talk about the family dynamics before she even joined the family. Why? I really truly don't know. She wasn't even there. She was talking about how Kody felt about that time. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't think that's really her place, especially because she always claims that Kody doesn't talk about his other relationships with her. If he doesn't, why would she know about how he felt during that time? And she also said that she's begged and begged to have a relationship with the other wives and the kids, but have we watched her try at once? I mean, come on. So I feel like we've only ever watched her cry about being the victim for the entire time this show has been going on. She doesn't seem to want to be a part of the family. She just wants to cry about how she isn't. Janelle pretty much said the same thing at one point when she said that there was a lot of history behind the scenes that went into whether or not she wanted to work on creating a closer relationship with Robin. So I don't know about you guys, but I would love to know what the history is. I can't even imagine all the craziness that went on behind the scenes during the first few seasons of the show. It felt like almost all of the last 10 minutes of the episode were dedicated to Robin crying and talking about getting involved in the other marriages and trying to persuade Kody to have better relationships with them. I mean, I'm sorry, but what? Didn't she just spend this entire last season saying that Kody is Kody and he's going to make his own decisions and she gets no say? She pretty much just admitted that what we already thought, that Kody does whatever she says. So I don't know how much crazier this last episode could get this week because this one was pretty dramatic and honestly it was hard to watch. As interesting as it is watching their family dynamics play out, I don't think any of us could have guessed that it would be this stressful to watch. So, wow, I gotta take a big breather, you guys. It was absolutely insane. Well, guys, thank you all so much for watching. I love you guys all so dearly. Please, if you are new to my channel, please do me a huge favor. Hit that like, follow, share, subscribe button. If you are not new, it would still mean the world if you could hit that like and share and subscribe and the follow button too. I love you guys all dearly. Thank you all so much for watching, and y'all better stay tuned for many more videos.